Hello and welcome to the Inside Social Work podcast, a podcast that aims to inspire, engage and connect social workers with other social workers and allied health professionals doing interesting and amazing things across the world. I'm your host, Marie Vakakis. Thank you for listening and I hope you enjoyed today's podcast episode. Hello and welcome back to the Inside Social Work podcast. This is part 2 in the series that I'm doing with Lachlan Slade, looking at gender and sexuality diversity. In the last episode, we talked a little bit about getting names right, language, not so much definitions because there's lots of places to find that. But we talked about when we get it right, when we get it wrong, and some of the things that are really important to consider. There'll be a link to that in the show notes, or just have a look at last week's episode and you'll find everything you need in that one. Today, Lachlan and I were talking about implicit bias and how that shows up in a counselling space, in case management, in anywhere that you work as a social worker, and some of the things that you can do to reflect on that and check in with yourself. Lachlan has worked on a workbook that's available for download. There'll be a link to that in the show notes where you can work through some of these different questions for yourselves in your own time as well. I hope you enjoy this chat with Lachlan Slade. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this series with Lachlan Slade. Welcome back, Lachlan.
Thank you. Good to be back.
So last episode we talked about you don't look gay enough. What would we label it?
You don't look gay.
Yeah. Talking about language and why it's important, some of the assumptions we make, what to do if you get it wrong.
Yes.
So if you haven't heard that, you don't need to listen to this, but we'll link to that in the show notes and feel free to check out the episode before this to learn a little bit more about language. Today's conversation will be looking at implicit bias in terms of, we're looking more at gender and sexuality rather than there's implicit bias in a range of different areas, which we might cover one day, but in this particular conversation we're looking at gender and sexuality. Tell us all about it, Lachlan.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, from the outset thinking about this episode, I think we as social workers are very well placed to work with and to neutralise our implicit bias, because so much of our training is about reflecting on ourselves, our upbringing, who we are ourselves in practice, and how to leverage that to work for us and to, I suppose, neutralise some of the elements that aren't working for us in terms of our upbringing and what we bring to counselling or community or whatever space that we're working in. When we talk about implicit bias, what we're talking about is, of course, the biases that we have towards groups of people, individuals, the way people look, the way people's lifestyles or backgrounds, whatever that might be, and the negative, positive, neutral attributes that our brain kind of tags to those attributes. And of course we're talking about much, I suppose, almost primal parts of our thinking and our understanding of people that, we often find our implicit bias has its home within our limbic system, our fight, flight, survival states sort of space. So we find that implicit bias will often come out not necessarily when we're consciously thinking about something, but more when it's, when we're implicitly thinking about something, hence the name,
Can you give an example?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So, for example, I think, and a few trigger warnings on this episode as well, for particularly queer people listening, that there is, for a lot of us who've grown up, particularly through the 90s and early 2000s, there was the bias and the bullshit, essentially, of gay men being pedophiles, that sort of thing. If you didn't know, that is, of course, a very incorrect bias to have. That, usually this was something that was espoused by a lot of religious extremists and, conservative politicians. And I realise, of course, this is something that came up a lot in the same-sex marriage debate even more recently. And I use the term debate very loosely, referring to that. That even if we don't believe that, if we've grown up in a society where that's a message that is put across, and when it's that primal of, what about the children sort of messaging, that sometimes digs its way into our brain, not in a way that we want it to, not in a way that we are actively going, oh yes, that's an important message, I'm going to squirrel that away in a special part of my brain to remember. Our brain just has a way of sponging on to that sort of stuff. Again, I suppose another reason why language, picking up from the last episode, is so important. So it's recognising that as humans we are going to pick up on these countless biases that we might have, and there's lots, around AIDS, around, even some, less negative biases of, all gay men are effeminate and that sort of thing. It's not necessarily a very negative bias, but it might be an incorrect bias and that sort of thing. It's being aware of these things as social workers, yeah.
So under this would be things like racism and sexism, like it all fits under this umbrella. Absolutely, yes. Any phobia or ism has a very similar pattern in our brain, yeah. But it doesn't always have to be an obia or ism, right? Like it could be in, if you're looking through resumes and you see a particular surname, the assumptions you make, or around, I think cultures are just an easy one to think of.
Yes.
Of like,
absolutely, and I think particularly in a rural community where everyone knows everybody, a particular surname will speak volumes, because you may have known of that person, and sometimes that may have classist backgrounds or something as well. Sometimes though it is, I was bullied by a kid at school with the same name or something, that it's not so much a class or an ism, it's a personal experience.
Oh, that reminds me of when people are trying to choose a name for their child and someone throws a name, they're like, oh no, that person was just a prick. No, we had a so-and-so in my school and so.
Oh yes, familiar with that one, yes.
So I think we've got a few things to cover today. We want to talk a little bit around how we check in with ourselves about our own implicit bias.
Yes.
How does representation or lack thereof when it comes to the queer community contribute to implicit bias? So much, and I think there's, we see a lot of conversation around queer representation in media and that sort of thing, and some will discount that as, well, what about queer homelessness or whatever, a very big issue might be, and they're one in the same. They are, all very similar issues, that when we see non-binary people on our TV, we then have a frame of reference for that very primal part of our brain to make reference to. That, and it's important to have that diversity of, and not just like the token, whatever non-binary person or gay best friend.
Exactly.
It's sort of, and I'm seeing it in some TV shows I watch. One of the nurses happens to have they them pronouns, or a teacher at school brings a same-sex partner to an event. Like, they're not caricatures of a particular stereotype. They are just being themselves.
That's it.
In an intersectional community. Like they educate, they work, they have kids. Like, it's
Yes, they are not cast as you are the non-binary character, you are the nurse who happens to be.
Yes.
Or the whatever that is also. Yes. Yeah.
So our brain uses that as a point of reference.
Yes.
How does that then start to challenge misassumptions?
Yeah. Sorry, can you clarify that one a little
So
bit?
if we'd never seen or heard of a non-binary person,
Yes.
and then we saw in a newspaper somewhere that all non-binary people, I'll make it up, love the colour orange.
Yes.
And then we see someone in orange and we think they must be non-binary.
Exactly.
But then you start seeing non-binary characters on,
Yes.
I don't know, Grey's Anatomy or
Yes.
whatever show you watch. And you're like, oh,
Yes.
they can like all different colour clothing.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's when it is important to get that nuance for those reasons, isn't it? So that we can get an accurate frame of reference for our clients, for people in our lives, our neighbours, our whoever it might be, and very important to make sure that there is that nuance and that depth of character in representation, and even in our workplaces as well. And I think a lot of us are starting to see pronouns as a standard thing in email signatures, that when we see the person from IT has they pronouns, it's like, oh, okay, there's a person in IT, they're not, I suppose myself working in an LGBTIQ specific role, they're just doing IT. That representation, that visibility really matters for that, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our clients as well.
Yes.
I think if they see it advertised in our communications or in our organisation,
Yes.
that sort of helps as well.
Absolutely. And even for, because, I certainly specialise in seeing queer communities, but many of my clients are straight, cis people as well. And a little while ago did a post for International Non-Binary Day, and I was very deliberate in saying, your friendly neighbourhood NB just doing non-binary things like counselling people, because it's, it's going, this is one job that a non-binary person can do among many things.
Yeah, it's really great.
Yeah.
Counselling, good job.
Yeah, I think so.
How do we incorporate reflective practice? That's a big thing for the social work profession.
Yes.
How do we use that to then check in with our own reactions?
Yes.
Like what can we start to do?
Absolutely, so much. I think.
All right, pens and papers out,
yes.
folks. Here we go.
Yes.
And I believe you're working on some resources that people can download after this if they're interested.
Definitely. A workbook on some journal prompts, I suppose. Whether it's a journal, whether it's something to mull over in your head around some questions, some critical questions to ask yourself. And I think one example is think of a particular gender or sexuality, and how were lesbian women, for example, represented in your life growing up, in your family of origin in particular, because so much of our frame of reference comes from that. How were lesbians spoken about? Or were they spoken about at all?
Oh, they were like some sexual fantasy or creepy old man thing.
Yes, exactly.
How do you tackle, and I'd love to come back to that example and think about how you unpack that.
Yes.
But people who say, oh, I don't see colour or I don't see gender. It's like, you can't fix it if you...
Absolutely.
It's like, that's I'm calling BS.
Yes, precisely. And it's interesting that I've got a workshop coming up in Shepparton in November, and I've very deliberately chosen the term neutralising queerphobia, in that we're not about getting rid of it or smashing it or ignoring it, or we're neutralising it. There's an active component to that, recognising its existence in our brain. I have queerphobia, in spite of working, well no, I'll even change my language there, it's not in spite of working within LGBTIQ communities, it is in part because I live in the world. I have biases towards different people, because we all do. And when we can neutralise that, and to be clear about that differentiation, it's about recognising, naming it, first of all, and being, I suppose, a radical acceptance that comes with that. It's not an embracing, it's not a shoving it away, it's accepting.
Oh, it's a very act thing
Yes,
for you to say.
I do like ACT, so yes.
And that's acceptance and commitment therapy, not the Australian Capital Territory for those listening.
Correct.
Just in case you confuse the two somehow.
Yes, exactly.
Who would, but...
You never know. Yeah, it is about accepting the existence of that bias and then working with it and going, all right, when this thought crops up in my brain, what do I do? What does my body language say? How do I, and if I don't know, how do I typically react when a thought like this comes into my brain? Do I tend to be hostile? Do I tend to try and run away from the situation? Do I tend to not try and talk about it? And how is that different from my being?
Yeah.
Am I usually very open?
Yeah.
But for this, I'm like, okay, gay, cool, next topic, too hard. And being able to, spend that time recognising, reflecting on that, and getting a habit of reflection in that.
So reflective practice, I mean, I think it's really difficult to do completely on your own without some prompts of some kind or without supervision, because you can't, I mean, you need to be, I think you need to be challenged and be uncomfortable to then grow. And I think around, going to the gym and lifting weights, you need a heavier weight to then feel the discomfort of the muscle, to then build more muscle, or run a little bit further or a little bit faster, a little bit longer to build your fitness. So the journaling prompts are really great. If we go back to that example you mentioned, and I'll just avert, neither of us are lesbian women, so we're using this as a hypothetical. How might that impact the work you do? So if I'm working with a teenager, a young adolescent client in my practice, and they mention they've got two mums, how might this implicit bias, like what might that mean that I overlook, for example? So if I was coming to you for supervision and I was talking about this client and I just threw in there, and their mums said X, Y, Z, how could we explore things that I might have overlooked? So it might not be as much as, I'm definitely not homophobic, I'm not thinking, well, that's ridiculous, I can't have two mums, or which child, whose mum is, like, I might just overlook things.
Yes, absolutely.
What could I start thinking about?
Yes, I think one thing is recognising the tropes that come with that, and recognising, getting your sociological imagination, going back to some of our sociology classes, around that, of recognising how does society treat lesbian women, particularly in a couple, particularly when they've got a child, that there's, the old thing of, everyone needs a strong male role model sort of stuff. Okay, how could that have impacted on my client growing up? And to be clear about that, recognising that as that's not necessarily so, that everyone needs a strong male role model in their life, that recognising that they're, a family is whole as it is, and being able to go, okay, how have people treated this family?
I was going to ask, so it's more than just my reactions, it's understanding other people, the comments that family may receive, the fear that they might have engaging with new services, like that's part of their, and think about it in a family therapy perspective, like their legacy, or the narrative that they have of things being safe or unsafe, or
and that's a really important one too, that for so much of the queer community, the impacts of queerphobia on individuals, on families, can have their lasting effects, even for, well-rounded parents who do the work and, go to counselling, whatever it might be. Sometimes, how that family engages in society, it might be that family avoids certain situations, and what does that mean? What are the follow-ons for that? How is that protecting or disadvantaging your client? These sorts of things, and I suppose recognising in there that there's certain elements of toxic positivity that can come with that may not be exactly the right word, but recognising that we don't want to see our LGBTIQ clients as wholly positive. And
no, I think it is the right word, because it's dismissive in nature.
Yes.
It's showing our discomfort, or it's putting someone on a pedestal, or expecting them to be extraordinary when some people are perfectly happy being ordinary, and we don't put that weight on someone else.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yep. And to put it more bluntly, the lesbian mothers may be just as likely to be engaged in child protection as a straight couple, or a single mother, or
victims of abuse, or
correct.
Yeah,
absolutely.
With implicit bias, so let's say you want to work on this in supervision. Do you just have supervision on implicit bias, or is it something you incorporate into your regular way of being supervised or case conceptualized? Like, how do you, if you're listening to this and thinking, wow, I never thought of it this way. I've never thought about the intersectionality, or how I show up as a therapist. And I think we'll have another whole episode on that as well.
Absolutely.
What do you do?
Yes.
How do you do it?
Absolutely. I think finding the right supervisor is really important.
And there's two really great ones right here.
Absolutely. Not that we're
Humble
biased
brag,
at all.
no.
Speaking of bias.
Absolutely.
But I know I've been very lucky in my supervisors that implicit bias and use of self in practice has been, to some degree and in different ways, a regular part of my supervision with my supervisors past and present. But not all supervisors are good at it. And again, my bias is showing, I think social workers are usually better at it. But again, not all social workers will get that properly. That, I suppose the dominance of psychology, particularly in mental health spaces, can mean that sometimes social workers will tend more towards psychological ways of thinking, and there's probably a whole episode on that, but yes.
I mean, if you're looking at things very individualistic, you're probably going to overlook some of those relational or intersectional things, because that's, I guess, how it goes.
Absolutely.
I wanted to... I've got so much to say about supervision in general. There's an episode that I recorded earlier this year, but I'm just trying to think, how would you introduce it? So let's say, I'll tell you some of the things that I might do, and tell me what you think. And this is not just for those in therapy. I think like private practice or counselling social workers, because this is bare bones social work, reflective practice stuff, right?
Absolutely.
Of what's your immediate reaction or assumption, and they're so immediate, and so obviously we don't even think that other people could think of it differently. So I was listening to a radio segment today around, I can't remember the name of the drug, but it's used to reverse opioid overdoses. And they were talking about implicit bias of some people like, oh no, I don't want to stock that because that's for junkies, or sometimes we just have these automatic things that we've never thought they could be different.
That's it.
So when talking about gender and sexuality, one of the questions that I sometimes will reflect on with my supervisees is, what were those roles like for you growing up? What was, like you said, what was portrayed in the media? How has that changed now? Because sometimes I think, and I've struggled with this, where the pendulum can swing the other way, where I'll go all in on sort of pro and advocate, and that can be too much because I'm trying to maybe not intentionally overcorrect, but
absolutely. And it's I get the image, and we did it a bit in our Q&A with parents of trans kids, of the parents who go all in, and I'm a proud parent of, and it's the kids like, oh, we're back. How I think one thing that, and I think I'm answering this question here, is the Johari window comes to mind, of what we know, the unknown knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns, and it's that we don't know what we don't know element there. It is hard to get that balance sometimes, because I think we do tend, at least a little bit, towards not reflecting enough, or reflecting maybe too much, or advocating too much, not advocating enough. I think, again, supervision can be a really important thing, but also I think if supervision's working well, we start to maybe get our supervisor's voice in our head, or...
Oh my goodness, mine, yes, I've had a few. They're like little, I feel like a cartoon where you've got like the little devil and then the little angel sitting on both shoulders, and I'm like, I know what the little angel would say, because that's my supervisor's voice, but damn, the other one's tempting too.
I know. Regularly, daily even. Yes. Being able to build on that, reflect on it, it's something that there is no destination with this sort of stuff. This is something that develops over time. For example, and I often get frustrated with discussions around, at least we're making it better for the next generation, or, the youth will save us. Frankly, that's reductive bullshit, because we aren't in this linear progression thing in history. History tells us that over and over again, that our implicit bias today versus implicit bias when the same-sex marriage plebiscite was on will be different, because there's different messages coming at us, we develop differently. When we're more stressed, our implicit biases might come out more, and so on and so forth, and it evolves within us over time.
So if people want to, and I'm probably putting you on the spot because you have some of this in the downloadable workbook, but if people wanted to, after listening to this episode, just kind of do a few, conversation pieces with peer supervision or in supervision, or some journaling, could you pose maybe 5 possible questions for them to check in and reflect on about, especially just in terms of gender and sexuality diversity, because that's, I guess, the little series we're doing.
Absolutely.
So what are 5 sorts of prompts?
Questions and prompts, I think the first thing, and I'm going to be a pain and go back one step, I think one of the most important things, and in group supervision, in workshops that I run, I always make sure that the space that we create, and I think this is important for our own individual work too, is a space where there is no such thing as a dumb question, where we're in this uncomfortable safe space, that we have to be uncomfortable to get through this sort of stuff, as long as we're feeling safe.
The psychological safety of the supervisor-supervisee relationship, or the peer group.
Exactly, exactly. That we feel like we can come out with potentially queerphobic stuff in the context of exploring implicit bias, and to be respectfully and pulled up and gone, there's that queerphobia. How about this instead? Or
which is amazing, right? Because you're listening to this, you're maybe trying to create something different. Once we know better, we do better.
Correct.
And it's an ongoing process.
Absolutely.
So we need a safe space. And I guess if you're doing this work on your own and you're journaling, you can create that as well. Like, it's not to be judgmental to yourself. There can be self-compassion. If you're going to do this as a peer group, maybe you need a few group norms, group rules. I hate using group rules, but
I know.
guidelines for
Exactly.
whatever,
The
successful group
culture.
supervision. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it is important to say we're going to stretch ourselves and we might get it wrong.
Exactly.
Just like if
Exactly.
you're trying a new, and I'm just thinking of the gym because I'm in pain from a gym exercise, so it's on my brain all day. You know, if you're going to try a new piece of equipment,
Yes.
you might get the positioning wrong. You might have the trainer come and adjust you. You might have them. You might do a lower weight so that you can see if the movement feels comfortable for you, and you might make adjustments. So
absolutely,
it's going to feel clunky and awkward, and you might just need that support to be like, this is the first time I'm doing this.
That's it.
I'm going to be clunky and awkward.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've created the psychological safety.
Yes, absolutely. The 5 questions.
Five prompts.
Yes.
And if you get stuck, I've got a few.
Yeah, awesome. let's collaborate. I think one of the first ones is coming back to your own childhood, your own upbringing, your own culture, and particularly for white people, recognising what culture bloody well means. I know that as a white person I will go, what is white culture? I don't have an answer. But
isn't it like Vegemite on toast?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Legitimately this morning I'm white as hell.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Meat pies. Oh, I'm a vegetarian. Not a very good white person. Although, yeah, veganism. Anyway.
Implicit bias, right? Assumption.
Yes. Correct. And
okay, so think about your childhood and your
Yes.
family of origin.
Absolutely. If you grew up in the 80s, you might have had all the Grim Reaper ads. If you grew up in the 90s, you would have had Will and Grace, and so on and so forth.
So how do we phrase that into a question? So think back
Yeah.
to maybe
Yes,
primary
good
school
question.
or kind of those more formative years.
Absolutely. How were queer people represented in your
Okay,
life?
great. So think about your early childhood experiences.
Yep.
How were queer people represented?
Yep. Absolutely.
And if they weren't,
Yes.
that's something too, right?
Correct. And what did that absence say? Is possibly that's a second question.
Yeah. Okay. So think about your
yes.
childhood.
Yep.
How were queer people represented?
Yes. Yep. When they weren't represented, what did that say? Did that say that we don't talk about these people? We don't talk about Bruno. These are people who are ostracised, or was it more of a these people don't exist? What are you talking about? And I'm thinking particularly of non-binary people in this instance. That particularly, for myself, growing up in the 90s, early 2000s, male, female, full stop, end of story. What did that say about otherness? And particularly in a rural context for myself, where footy ruled everything, what did that say?
Oh, thank God you don't mention the bloody cats again.
And I have to say, low-key supportive,
Okay.
but yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, what did the absence say?
Yes, absolutely.
Because what we don't talk about
Yes.
has a message too.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
So that's kind of question. We'll take that as 2.
Yeah.
So what did the exclusion of certain things mean?
Yep, absolutely. You've got some questions in there too?
Yeah, I was going to say looking at gender roles. So we've been talking about gender and sexuality. So have a look at your family of origin.
Yes.
And think about what messages did you receive about gender norms and gender roles.
Absolutely. Yes.
What's appropriate to wear, boys don't cry, that's not ladylike, I've never heard anyone say that's not lordly like, but a lot of things weren't ladylike. So how was gender spoken about, or your gender norms? And that one's unavoidable because you saw them being acted out in households with neighbours.
Yes.
And not the TV show Neighbours, although that probably...
That too.
Yeah, that too.
Depending on how much you engaged in that, yes. Yeah.
So there's kind of 3 for you.
Yes.
And we'll have these written out in the downloadable as well, so you can reflect on them. I'll be on the first couple of exercises. 2 more
Absolutely.
for our listeners.
Yeah, I think I'd expand on that as well. That looking at your family versus other families, your neighbourhood, and so forth as well is really, really important. I think looking at I suppose your reaction to when implicit biases come up for you when something starts to slip out of your mouth, or if the thought comes up in the back of your head? What's your instinct on that? And
so when you catch yourself,
yes,
which is great, you're reflecting, you're
yes,
acknowledging.
Yes.
You've caught yourself out with an assumption.
Yep. It's, I suppose, bringing the internal camera outwards, to bring it out of your brain and into what are you seeing, and what are your actions, how are you speaking?
Yeah.
Are you speaking at all? Are you avoiding it completely?
So are you saying in the room, or in an interaction with somebody, or
Yes.
afterwards in your reflection?
Oh yeah, look, maybe both. Both. But probably start with your interaction with your client, your neighbour, your whoever. And
so is this something like sort of saying, you know, a kid coming to a session and saying like the car broke down, it's like, oh, so was Dad able to change the tyre, like that kind of,
yes,
and then you just think, what if they don't have a dad, or what if,
that's it.
You know, why are men knowing how to change tyres all of a sudden, like
exactly.
Sort of playing like when you catch yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And when, or even when, you know, someone on the intake form, because it always comes down to the intake form, says that they're in a relationship, you know, a man's in a relationship with a man, for instance, how do you notice you react to that in your brain, and how does your body language change? What's your first instinct to do with that? Do you want to pry and go and, you know, that many examples of queer people being asked inappropriate questions about their relationships or their bodies, and do you tend towards that? Do you go, oh, gay, oh, geez, I don't know what to do, avoid?
All right, great. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
I'd like to add to that. If you have it in your intake form, you should be prepared for what the answers could be.
Absolutely.
If you're not going to do something with that information, why is it in your intake form?
Yes.
And this goes for big organisations too. Like, if you're not going to use the preferred name, why have it in the intake form? If you're not going to do something with the information, if you're not going to read it before the session or it shouldn't be in there. Either do something with it, because that person has either had some relief that, it's on there, and then you're like, so tell me about who's in your life right now, or do you have a girlfriend or boyfriend? And they've clearly written, I have a boyfriend. So
that's it.
So, totally. But if you're not going to use it, get it out of your intake form.
Absolutely. And similarly goes for if you've got the rainbow flag on your door or whatever it might be, back that up. But yes.
Ooh,
yes.
I like that.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so check in. So we've got, think about how queer representation growing up.
Yep.
And then if there was the absence of that, what that meant or what that implied.
Absolutely.
It's looking at gender roles and gender norms. The fourth one is your reaction, what you do when you get confronted with one of your own biases.
Absolutely.
Final kind of wrap up.
Yeah. And look, this might be a leap ahead, but it's at least one to, look, I'd encourage you for this one to think on it and regularly come back to it, of what can you do instead, of how can you show up instead. And I think one thing that comes to mind that, you know, you can take away and play with yourself is to, when I was running an LGBTIQ group at a university I was working at, we had a ritual of whenever somebody disclosed their pronouns, their gender, their sexuality, we all clapped and cheered. And it could be, you know, someone says, oh, I'm gay, of going, oh, yay, awesome, of showing that affirmation first. Partly because I really like it because it helps to, in part, if we can get into that habit, it helps to, in part, override some of our implicit biases and helps to neutralise it and helps us to, start to take a different turn with it of, I've just affirmed that, and that goes back into our brain as I just affirmed that, so that must be a good thing. Okay. And on that will flow.
So the question is to start thinking about what could you do instead.
Yes, absolutely. Some little shortcuts that you know work for you and the way that you work, and what will help to hijack that, to neutralise that.
Right. I just had a thought as you were saying that.
Awesome.
around maybe not toxic positivity, but if you're so affirming and you're working with someone who comes out, you might forget that that's a really big effing deal for them.
Yes.
So it might be like,
yes.
oh yeah, cool, yeah, you're queer, no problems.
Absolutely.
And they might have just been mulling this over and grappling with all this internalized homophobia or fear, or my parents love me or my friends accept me, and you're just like,
absolutely.
Yeah, moving on.
Exactly.
So finding this balance of acknowledging, maybe celebrating,
absolutely,
not dismissing. And we're never going to get it right though, right? So it could actually be asking, was that the first time you've said that out loud?
Absolutely.
How was that for you? Is this one of those like high five moments, or just kind of move on? Like use your self to, your personality to shine.
I love that. Yes. And
because that's what my teens would love, a high five.
Absolutely.
I'm like, do we need like a mini dance party? And they'll put on their favourite song and we'll have a little boogie. People must think we're absolutely bonkers if they could see through the windows.
Yes. They're the best sessions.
So some really great tips for those who are really interested in this. We've, I say we, but Lachlan's mostly been working on a downloadable. So there'll be a link to that in the show notes where you'll have some journaling prompts and a bit of a workbook that you can work through at your own pace to help you start challenging some of these implicit biases and
absolutely improve your practice, because we're all trying to do that little bit by little bit.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Terrific. Thank you
for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Inside Social Work podcast. I hope you've enjoyed my chats with Lachlan. They'll be around for a few more episodes while we take a bit of a deep dive into gender and sexuality, diversity, LGBTQIA+, practice, how we can be more inclusive practitioners and start to reflect on our own biases, learn about different ways of communicating, a whole bunch of good stuff coming up. Don't forget to, if you're interested in that downloadable, that workbook where Lachlan has some prompt questions for you, it's a really great resource to help reduce implicit bias and really reflect on yourself as a practitioner working with LGBTQIA young people or people in general, and some ways to, improve your practice and where to from here. So check that out. There'll be a link in the show notes, and I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast episode. The Inside Social Work podcast would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we record this podcast today and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Thank you for listening. If you would like to support the podcast, you could leave a rating or a review on iTunes or wherever it is you get your podcast, and feel free to join the Facebook group. It'd be great to hear from you. Have a lovely day. Bye.